Yep.
Church and state weren't separate in Massachusetts.
You're right that they weren't separate in Massachusetts. So in Rhode Island, they were entirely separated by church and state. So Massachusetts put together. Rhode Island, nope. They even said it in their charter, which is kind of like their constitution saying separation of church and state. We're not doing this. All right. Number 6. What colonies were included in the New England Confederation? Oh, I'm sorry, Genesis.
The colonies that were included in the New England Confederation were Massachusetts, Bay, Plymouth, Connecticut, and New Haven.
Alright, what's the real name for it? Yes, Plymouth. So I know it helps with spelling, just remember Plymouth is how we say it. Alright, Ethan, name the organization under which New England colonies, New York and New Jersey, were united in the 1680s.
The Dominion of New England United Third Colonies.
Okay, yes, the colonies of New York, New Jersey, and the New England colonies. Oh, and a side note, for number 6, Genesis, why was Rhode Island not invited in the New England Confederation? Did you notice?
Because they didn't like them.
Yes, why did they like them?
Why did they not like them?
Yeah.
I forgot.
Alright, because they were, what was the denomination in Rhode Island? Do you remember? Baptist. What was the denomination in like Massachusetts, Connecticut, and that area?
Captain Lockett.
No, perfect.
Huh?
What was the denomination in the Massachusetts area? Denomination.
I can answer the answer.
Alright, well,
No.
Chris gets a chance now. Alright, Chris.
Protestant.
What type of Protestant?
Puritan.
Puritan. And so because of that, they considered the Baptists heretics. So even though they were Christians, they said, no, we don't want y'all, so you're not invited. But it's okay. Rhode Island didn't really care at the point. Alright, so looking over to page number 36, now 1 through 9 odd. What colony was founded as a haven for the English Catholics? Remember, Church of England was the main religion of England. So the Catholics came over because they were facing persecution as well. Alright, Ethan.
I love Maryland.
Good job. And then what, who became the first governor? That was the second part to it.
Maryland was founded by Catholics by he was the mayor. Calvert was the governor.
Yeah, so Leonard Calvert. Good job. Number 3, explain why the grand model plan for a feudal system in Carolina was doomed to fail. Genesis, we'll just go backwards.
The grand model plan for a feudal system in Carolina was doomed to fail because there was not enough settlers. Feudalism was based on land, and social class was based on accomplishment.
So because of that, it's not going to work. Because over in England, you had to work the land because all the land was dibbed, basically. Every land was claimed. In America, if you don't like the land, you can move farther west at least. Not you do have Native Americans, but you could still move farther west and talk to them about getting land over there. Alright, number 5. How did New Netherland become New York? Chris. Sorry, I already called on you. Sorry.
The king renamed New Hampshire into New York.
Okay. Yes, that works. But what was the event to where New Netherland became New York? Alright, Brecken.
What?
Question on your arm.
Number 5. You're right that they just renamed it. So, okay, yes, that works basically
But-
as how did New Netherland become New York is they renamed it? Okay, yes, that works. But why? Like, what happened? Genesis, what you got?
I think that because it was named in the honor of Duke, New York.
If you're getting closer. Okay.
Is it the patronage system?
Okay, nope, that was the system that was established, kind of like the feudal system. Ethan, you got anything?
We're founders.
Okay.
James II renamed it himself.
Wait, no, I thought it was. Is it the Duke?
Because
of
he was a
York?
York.
Okay, no, James
Is it-
okay, this is Charles II.
Is it
Charles II, okay, now, who controlled New Netherland? Think of it this way.
Edith.
What?
What?
Who controlled the...
The York dude.
Okay, not yet. So originally,
Peter.
the Dutch controlled it, and then England and Netherlands, or Holland, they were going into war and skirmishes. That's how Charles II got it, but the Dutch still lived in Netherlands. In order to kind of keep peace with real Holland, he gave it to his brother, Duke of York, and then in honor of giving away of this land, then that's whenever they renamed it to him, and that's whenever the English officially took over it. And that's how come, if you remember from your reading, the Dutch were unhappy about it because they felt like that they just got basically just given away and then given away again, which But yes, you are right that yes, it became New Netherlands because basically the person that controlled it changed hands. Alright, number 7. What religious group was Pennsylvania for? What religious group was Pennsylvania a haven? That was a weird way of saying that. Quakers is correct. Alright, number 9. How was Georgia unusual? Who founded the colony and when? Alright, Chris.
Georgia was unusual in the way that it was born much later in 1977.
That's part of it.
By James Oglethorpe.
Okay, not just the fact that it was born later, what else about it made it unusual? You're right that it was founded much later than all these other colonies.
Not settled for profit, it was a benevolent undertaking.
Good enough, and that's exactly. Alright, you can go ahead and put this away. We're going to do just a palm game because I have to move very quickly today. I have to go through a lot of terms and definitions because that's a lot of pages. And then we have to go through a lot of things today. And then remember, we're going to try to review our states and capitals. Our states and capitals quiz is going to be sometime next week. I haven't decided when yet. It'll be sometime, probably in the next week and a half.
Are we not?
Yep. We always have.
Real
Are we not having a quiz?
We are having a quiz today. I can tell you that because it's Friday and we haven't had one yet. Alright, so first person to raise your hand. Gets the question right, gets the point. Alright, so, sure to close your textbooks. Who gave England the first printed English New Testament? Go. Okay, make sure that you're not hitting it too loud because it shows up much louder for Genesis and Quentin than it does for
Genesis?
y'all.
Hello?
Not Genesis, sorry.
Yeah,
Wrong
it's too
person,
loud.
Wrong female. Jamie and Quentin. So make sure that you're not too loud for it. No, if you just raise your hand, I'll be able to see you. Alright, it was Genesis.
Hand down.
What's his first name?
William.
William. Way to help her out. But just remember, let her figure
I
it
didn't
out.
hear you.
William Tyndale. Alright, who was known as the Morning Star of the Reformation? Go. W for last name.
W for last name?
W for last name.
Order the first name.
J.
J?
J. J. Couple seconds, we gotta go.
John
John
Wayne.
Wycliffe. John Wycliffe.
John Wayne Gacy.
John Wycliffe. Okay, don't do that because you're going to write that on the quiz. I've had people do that before, where they remember the wrong thing and then it's wrong. I can't even give spelling like part of credit for that. So don't try to do like nonsense for it because people will hear it and they'll associate that with the correct answer. So just be careful. All right, what is the document that guarantees certain freedoms and create a more permanent representative council for the people in England? Go. That was Brecken.
That was me.
Magna Carta. Who broke off from the Church of England? So, who broke off from the Roman Catholic Church and formed the Church of England? Go. Okay, that was easy.
Henry VIII.
Henry VIII. Alright. Alright, what year did John Cabot explore Newfoundland for England? What year? I will give you the first.
14.
Yeah, but remember, this isn't going to be on the quiz. I'm going to erase this before we start. Go.
Me. That was me.
1492?
1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, because this is the one that Ethan guessed.
Yes, it is.
1455.
Nope.
Christopher Columbus was the first person to explore North America, so it couldn't be anything before 1902.
Give me your answer.
1497.
1497. What is it? 1497.
For real, bro.
Alright, you guys know what's happening. Alright, who founded Roanoke? So who is the guy that founded Roanoke? Go.
Mary Pocahontas?
No.
Just kidding. Last name starts with W.
Last name is W.
John White. John White.
It is John White. Good job. Alright, so who was the first English child born in the present day United States? Go. I think your game was already got one. Go. Okay, reckon. Virginia Dare. Alright, what is the year for the founding of Jamestown? I will help you out and I will give you the first two. Year, founding of Jamestown. Go. Okay, Ethan, you did get it up.
1607.
1607 is correct.
I thought it was a
I'm looking for who's coming off the desk first. Alright, what was Jamestown's biggest problem? Like, what was the main problem to where they almost all died? Go. Okay, that was Chris.
Is it a system?
Yes.
Common store system.
Common source system. Who saved Jamestown from destruction? Go.
Mary Pocahontas?
Nope.
Something.
Me.
You guys have
Oh, I know this one way.
What?
Sorry.
Last name begins with S. Sorry, S. Wrong letter.
Smith.
Smith. What's his first name?
John.
Alright. Oh, and he did marry Pocahontas. Finally.
Got it.
This is on my camera keeps like freaking out on me. Go.
That was me.
Last name starts with an R.
Okay, don't be creepy.
Last name starts with an R.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Wow. He said, Wolf.
Rolfe. Make a note for it. Alright.
Who?
John Rolfe. That looks like Rolfe. John Rolfe.
Rolfe.
Alright.
Lynchman.
So, two things happened in 1619. Name one. Go.
That was
It was just.
Genesis, the slave
Okay,
trade.
Slave, do you remember the other one?
9.
Oh, that's right. Okay, do you remember the other one?
The House of Ferguson.
The House of
House
Ferguson.
of
Make a note
Ferguson.
of
I'd
that.
say Genesis, the slave trade.
Okay, be appropriate. Be appropriate. Okay, but I just don't want there to be any question later on.
I'm offended.
How?
Alright, what is the form of church government in which everybody believers should be independent and self-governing? So they say each church should be responsible for their own like standards.
You said that?
Like what's that
They.
term? Like the belief that each church should govern themselves. Go.
I hurt my hand.
Start with C. 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 Go second. We gotta go. Ethan's next.
Come on.
A church.
Nope.
Starts with a C. Church. Congregation. Church
Don't be a
congregational. Church congregational act.
Yep, sure is. Nope.
If someone gets closer, I have to give it to them.
Congregational movement.
Nope, this is
Congregationalism.
Congregationalism.
Bruh.
Who was the leader of the church congregation in Scrooby, England? So who was their pastor?
Scooby.
Scrooby. Go. You just gotta move, Brecken.
What's Star Wars?
It starts with an R. Her last name.
Robinson?
Robinson. John Robinson. Alright. Alright, we're gonna have to calm down because I can't keep stopping because people are laughing over and over again. So make sure if you have a question, raise your hand. We're gonna have to cut out the comments. Christian, understand?
Who was John Robinson?
Okay, leader of the Scrooby congregation. Alright, what was the document that they signed in order to have legal jurisdiction in their area? Because they technically landed outside where their charter was supposed to be. Go. That was Chris. That is Mayfair Compact. Alright, what is the year for the founding of Plymouth? Remember, Plymouth is how you say it, so what is the year for the founding of it? Go. It's Chris.
What?
He's fast.
No,
He's not fast.
Okay, hurry, we gotta go.
16. For the founding of
Plymouth.
Just say it. We already let you know.
1607.
Nope, Ethan was next.
1640.
It is 1620.
207 is already on the board.
It's okay, not all the dates are in order all the time. Now, your book does a good job putting them in order for you, but there are some times where dates aren't necessarily all the time. Ethan, stop being creepy and weird. Alright, who was... Ethan, seriously, stop. Alright, who was the Indian that taught the Pilgrims how to survive in the wilderness? Cheater.
Wait, you said go?
Yeah, Squanto. Alright, who was chosen to be the first governor for the Pilgrims, but he died? Go. That was Chris. His last name begins with a C.
C.
C. C.
That's easy.
Okay? 12 seconds. Alright, Genesis?
9.
Okay. Nope, sorry. John Carver. Write down. John Carver. Carver.
Carver.
First governor.
Like
But he
Jimmy
died.
Carter.
What?
He carved his own death. That's not from
You're thinking of Jimmy Carter. Orange Carver.
He carved his death.
Okay, just help you to remember. What?
Jimmy Carter, a NASCAR racer.
Jimmy Carter was a president. Okay, we gotta go. Alright, what is the first American history book? What is the first American history book? Go. He's still beating you.
History of Plymouth slave. No, history of Plymouth. History of Plymouth plantation.
Yes, good job.
What?
Alright, history of Plymouth plantation. That's it. Alright, who plantation? Because there was like one big group.
Plymouth Plantation.
Plymouth plantation. Who wrote the history of Plymouth plantation? This was the second governor, and he eventually died, like not immediately. Go. Is that it? Going for
Let's
it?
start with
It starts, his lesson begins with a B.
a B.
B.
Bradsworth. Bradsworth.
Bradsworth? If someone gets closer.
Bradford.
Bradford?
Bradford.
If someone gets closer, I have to give it to them.
Bradford.
Bradford. So, William Bradford. Alright, who was chosen to be the governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony? So, Massachusetts now. Puritans. Who was chosen to be their governor? Go. Okay, that was Chris.
Let's start.
His last name begins with a W. So many W names this there.
Robert Williams.
Okay, you're thinking Rhode Island. That's Roger Williams. Okay.
Robert. He said Robert Williams. Right? Something like that.
His last name begins with a W.
A W.
W. No second?
I don't know.
Correct. Genesis, did you know? Alright, Reckon?
Williams.
Watch.
Nope.
Is it Willis?
John Winthrop. John Winthrop.
Man,
John
Winthrop,
Winthrop.
huh?
There's so many Johns.
For
Well,
real?
that is so common in
My
this
brother's
area.
name is John.
Almost everyone. If you don't know, just guess John. You're probably right.
James.
Not all the time, but a good
Chad.
chance. Alright, who was the leader or the founder of the Connecticut colony? His name is not John, first of all, as I know. But his last name begins with an H. Begins with an H. Go.
Last name begins with an H.
H.
You say King?
No. Thinking Henry, but no. Alright, anybody else want to guess?
Nope.
Nope. Alright, Thomas Hooker. Thomas Hooker.
Who?
Hooker. Thomas Hooker. Alright. What was the first written constitution in America? Has to do with Connecticut, so she helped you out. Go. Alright, Ethan?
Constitution of
I was gonna guess for now. F. No. F.
Facts and opinions.
Nope.
I don't
Bad.
think it.
Alright, anybody else want to guess?
Nope.
Alright, fundamental orders of Connecticut. Fundamental orders of Connecticut. Alright, who founded Rhode Island?
Slow language.
Gotta be cut.
Okay, no more random stuff. Alright, who founded Rhode Island?
She didn't just say go. What
I
are
know.
you doing?
It's very easy. Go.
Roger
Okay.
Williams.
Roger Williams is correct. Alright, what is the name that he book? What is the name that he wrote trying to evangelize the Native Americans? Go. Chris? You want it or no? It starts with a K.
Okay.
K.
Kicking
King.
Right now. Be appropriate. Be appropriate.
Kingsway.
Nope. Alright, anybody else want to guess?
No.
Alright, key into the language of America.
Huh?
Key into language. Because it was how to talk to them like their language. Plus
Key
the
into-
key, like unlocking a door. Key
Key
into the language of America.
That's
Alright. What? Name a colony where the main denomination was Puritan. You have a bunch of colonies. You could choose from them. Go. After this. Okay, yes, Plymouth does get absorbed into, it will be another one that started off as Puritan. Because remember the separatists or the founding fathers were technically in Plymouth.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, Massachusetts or
Bruh.
Connecticut. Those, either one of those works for it. Also, New Hampshire and Maine get sucked into it eventually. What was the main religion for Rhode Island, or at least one of the major ones that your book talks about? Because that's what comes starts getting important, because we start talking about other ones like Delaware today. Go. Brilliant! Baptist. Alright, go ahead and add up your points. Anyone got 10 or more? Because we did a bunch.
I forgot to write mine down.
Hey,
Yeah,
okay.
I want- yeah,
Alright.
I won.
How many do you
Alright,
have?
who has 8 or more? 5 or more?
I have 7. I have 7 too.
Okay, well, you both get candy.
Question.
No, you both get candy. Alright, take out 2 pieces of paper because now y'all are still farther apart, but I still want 2 pieces of paper. 2 pieces of paper, pen and pencil. have to keep track. This is technically quiz 3. Technically.
Hold on.
Or quiz 4 if we're counting the editorials.
Before we start.
Make sure that you ask your friend at the start of the class, not during the class. But I understand unfortunate occurrence has happened. Make sure you ask at the beginning of class, before the bell rings, because technically it's unprepared if you don't have it once I call for
After a
it.
quiz, can I use my freebie?
Sure. Alright, number 1. Make sure your name and date is at the top. I fixed the date on the sideboard now, so it is the 21st. Make sure you write 21st, make sure you write your name. You want to write quiz 3, technically right. Quiz 4, for counting in editorials, I'll decide later on if I want to go through straight, because I want to see how many quizzes I can get out of this year. So, 3 or 4, I'll decide later on. Number 1, who gave England the first printed English New Testament? First and last name. Who gave England the first printed English New Testament? Number 2, what was the document which guaranteed certain freedoms and created a more permanent representative council for the people of England? What was the document that guaranteed certain freedoms and created a more permanent representative council? Number 3, who was the first English child to be born in present-day United States? What was her name? Who was the first English child to be born in present-day United States? Hope you commit to memory. What is the year for the founding of Jamestown? What is the year for the founding of Jamestown? Number 5, who saved Jamestown from destruction? Who saved Jamestown from destruction? Ethan, you have a question? Nope. Number 6, 2 events that you need to know happened in 1619. Write down one of them. I don't care which one. Pick the one you can spell better. There are 2 events that happened in 1619. You either had the formation of something or the start of something. So pick one of the 2 events. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then start praying and guess. Number 7. What is the idea that the church government says that everybody, a believer, should be independent and self-governing from each other? So what is the idea that each church body is separate and should be self-governing? What is the idea that the church government should be self-governing between the body of believers, so each church is independent, basically, is the idea. So the form of church government which says that everybody believers should be independent and self-governing. Number 8, who was the leader of the Scrooby congregation? Who was the pastor? Who was the leader of the Scrooby congregation? Number 9, who was the Native American that helped the Pilgrims? Do your best with spelling, you have no idea. Who was the Native American that helped the Pilgrims? And then number 10, what was the title of the first American history book? What was the title of the first American history book? And anyone need anything repeated? Which one? 7? What is the form of church government which says that everybody, a believer, should be independent and self-governing? So each church is responsible for their own standards of belief. Number 8, who was the leader of the Scrooby congregation? So who was the pastor? Bonuses are rare. Yes.
Both things that happened in 1619 for bonus.
Okay, I will take that then for Jamie and Quentin. If you can write out the second thing, either write it all to the side, or if you want to write B down at the bottom, what is the second event that happened in 1619? I will take that. Okay, but keep in mind, bonuses are rare, so don't expect a bonus every single history class. I know history's hard, but you need to be studying on your own and not just banking on it. What is my question?
So thanks for that, Brendan.
Alright, anyone has anything else repeated?
That means back now.
Yes, no. Alright, go ahead and do your textbooks. We are on page, let me look really quick while I collect the quiz. We are on page, I'm counting, 30. So we gotta finish page 30 through 36 today, so I have to talk quickly. So make sure you are paying attention and following along. Be sure to be studying your states and capitals. If I don't get to it today, make sure you're studying over the weekend. Recommend you Sorry. Alright, so page 30. So, Union of the New England Colonies. So we talked about New Hampshire and Maine. So again, you have New Hampshire and then Maine up towards the top. They get merged into the Massachusetts colony, and then they separate later on into their own individual states later. But we're just pointing out that this is the offshoots of the Massachusetts Bay colonies. We also have Connecticut down here. Now, Plymouth and Rhode Island is also here. They were not considered part of Massachusetts Bay. Robert Williams got kicked out of Massachusetts, but he formed basically his own separate one. They don't get talked to, they don't get invited to stuff because the Puritans considered them heretics. So they shunned them basically. So Rhode Island gets left alone in a lot of this. So New England, because you have the New England Confederation. So Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, Connecticut, and New Haven, they all assembled to Boston and formed the New England Confederation. Rhode Island was not invited because they were full of heretics in their mind. So this was to kind of help them kind of rally together against the Indians. Now, the Indian at the time, he had the English name of King Philip. Now, that was not his real Indian name. They changed or took English names to kind of work with the English, because kind of how whenever you have someone from another country come over, they get tired of English speakers butchering their names. So they took an English name, partly to help kind of blend with the English, and then also it's just easier just to deal with the English if you take an English name for it. So your book points out that the Confederation's greatest triumph came in 1675 and 1676. Whenever they fought in King Philip's War, that was a war against the Native American. King Philip, of course, that wasn't his real Indian name, but he took it so that way it would be easier for the English to deal with them. This is an important precedent of the voluntary union of the colonies. Later on, we all get united again with the War for Independence. So this is the idea of, even though we're separate colonies, they can and they sometimes will unite together so that they can defend themselves, and then later on defend themselves against Great Britain as well. Alright, the Dominion of New England. In the 1680s, this is whenever you were having England were going through a lot of their struggles with Parliament and the King and deciding how much power that the King has for it. You don't have to know the English Civil War. Your book's just pointing out that this is happening in England. So because of that, it is affecting the American colonies as well. So between 1686 and 1689, James II proceeded to unite New England colonies with New York and New Jersey. We're going to talk about New York and New Jersey in a second. As the Dominion of New England. King James II appointed Sir Edmund Andros to be the royal governor over the Dominion. He was kind of supposed to be like the king of the colonies. Crack the door so she can come back. So that way he was supposed to help represent the king's will in the colonies. Now the colonies, they were used to kind of being left alone during the whole English Civil War. They were used to being more self-government. So whenever Sir Edmund Andros came over and was trying to basically rule over them, you think the colonies liked it? Reckon. No, they did not. So they didn't really like him that well. He did not get along with the colonists. The colonists didn't really like him. But he is away from England, and he has to live here and survive. So he did not want to get murdered. And so he was trying to basically work with the colonists as well, but at the same time, he was supposed to represent the king and to have the king's will with the colonies as well. Your book points out that the Dominion of New England did not last long. Whenever in 1688 the Glorious Revolution happened in England, which again you don't have to know because that's more of world history, and that's whenever James II fled England and the Prince and Princess of Orange, William and Mary, they came into power in England. Now, whenever the colonists heard that James II is no longer the King of England, they said, Sir Edmund Andros is no longer in charge of us. Your book puts it that they disposed of him. It makes it sound like bad. They killed him. They did not. They just sent him back to England. But your book puts it kind of bluntly, so just make sure that he did not die. They just basically said, you are now our prisoner. you're going back home, we don't want to murder you, we don't want to kill you, we don't like you, go back to England and deal with it in England. So just make a note though that he got sent back to England, so he didn't die. Your books make it sound like he died. Massachusetts though lost her self-governing charter, so she became a royal colony as opposed to self-governing colony. So that was a little bit of change for them, but overall the colonies kind of went back to normal. Alright, so the next major category is the proprietary colonies. If you want to look at your textbook on page 32, you notice you have a chart that lists the 13 colonies as well as the 40 people that founded them. You'll want to note that, so if you want to star it as you go through it. I don't have that chart as a slide. I wish I did, because that chart is amazing and it helps out so much. So, the proprietary colonies, these colonies are based on land grants by the king made to individual proprietors or owners. Basically, they're trying to create a lord in the new world and create feudalism in the new world again. It doesn't work because feudalism is based off who controls the land. If you don't like the person that owns the land, move. There's plenty of land in America. So that's part of the reason why it doesn't work over here. Alright, so first off, you have Maryland. So King James I, he granted George Calvert, he is the first Lord Baltimore. So note the titles with them because the titles are important. So George Calvert, he was the first Lord Baltimore. That's his title.
What is it? Is it
Wait, where?
Celsius?
Oh, no, he's the second Lord Baltimore.
George Calvert.
Yeah, so George Calvert, first Lord Baltimore, he was given an area of land north of the Potomac River. He called the colony Maryland in honor of his queen, Henrietta Maria. So it's like Maryland, so Maryland is how we say it today, quickly. He died though before the charter was officially given to him, and so his son, Celsius Calvert, he becomes the second Lord Baltimore. So again, this is a title. So the second Lord Baltimore. And he decided that he intended Maryland to be a haven for the English Catholics. Now keep in mind, what is the major religion of England at this time? We're on page 31 if you're looking for Genesis. Alright, so what is the major religion of English at this time? Chris? In England? It's the Church of what? For England in particular. That's why Puritans are coming over. And the Separatists are coming over. The Baptists. Not quite. Reckon? Okay, no. Ethan, you know? Remember Henry the First broke off with the Roman Catholic Church to form this because he wanted to be in charge of the church. Anglican Church. So the Anglican or the Church of England. That's why the Puritans were leaving. That's why the Baptists were leaving. That's why eventually the Quakers will be leaving. They don't like this particular denomination. Also found the Puritans and the Catholics were facing persecution in England. Now, the Catholics in England could have moved to basically any other country in the area, and that would have basically saved them from persecution. But a lot of them liked the English culture, so they were coming over to the New World. So make a note for that Maryland, it was supposed to be a haven for the English Catholics. So make a note that Maryland in particular for it. So the first two shiploads of people were coming over. They established a settlement in St. Mary's. You don't have to know the city for it, but that was the first city for them. His younger brother, Leonard Calvert, he was the person that became the first governor. Now he's not the title, he's not the lord. So just make a note that he's the person that's actually in charge of coming over and actually establishing the colony. So you have three people of the Calvert family. To make a note, George Calvert, he was the father. He died before the charter got issued. The second Lord Baltimore, that's the firstborn son, so he's Celsius Calvert, he gets the title, while the younger brother, Leonard Calvert, he gets to come over to the New World and actually establish it. So just be careful, there's a lot of people with this family with it. Alright, political freedom. So your book points out that Lord Baltimore, he claimed to have the authority to propose laws for the colony, and representatives can only approve or reject legislation. However, the freemen, they claimed that their representatives had the right to propose laws themselves. Eventually, the colonists ruled, eventually the colonists' way gets to come to the main one, because Lord Baltimore stays in England. So they eventually, since they're over here, and it's at least over a year, their way prevails, and so it's just over to their side for it. Religious freedom, now, it was supposed to be set up for the Catholics, but not enough Catholics came over. So the Catholics are worried that they're going to face persecution as well. Flip the page. So, they passed the Toleration Act. You make a note of that. This granted freedom of worship to anyone who professed to be a Christian. Now keep in mind, are the Jews considered Christians? Anyone know? Raise your hand. Okay, Ethan?
No.
No, they're not, because they're looking for the Messiah. So they don't believe in Jesus Christ, that he's already come and died for them. So because of that, Jews were persecuted, Muslims were obviously persecuted, and so that's how come this one was a little bit more of religious freedom. Keep in mind, Rhode Island was the only one that had complete separation of church and state. But this one was saying, this one, it was freedom of worship to anyone who professed to believe in, who professed to be a Christian. So if you were an atheist, you wouldn't get along well. If you were a Jew, you didn't get along well. If you were someone that believed in Allah, you didn't get along well. So your book is pointing out, again, some of them had more religious freedom than others. Is it a fast question? We only have about 5 minutes.
Persecution, you mean they killed them?
In some cases, it wasn't straightforward murder, but it was the idea of you can't vote in a lot of cases, or you can't get land here. So, not necessarily murder. Sometimes, I guess it could be, depending on how mad they were about it. But in a lot of cases, you just got persecution of, basically, you got discriminated against for not being a Christian. Alright, so the Carolinas are settled. So again, this was another version of feudalism. It was the grand model in the Carolinas. So, Charles II, he granted the land to 8 noblemen. Now, you do not have to know the 8 noblemen, your book doesn't give you the names for them. But they basically, they were supposed to kind of help set up the land and control it, because they supported him in his return to power with the whole English parliaments and all the problems with it. He basically gave it to him as like a reward. So they were trying to divide up Carolinas to basically have feudalism in America. It didn't work for several reasons, because mainly they didn't have enough settlers coming over to help support it. Feudalism is again based off land. There's a lot of land in America. And then also in America, no one cares who your parents were as long as you can make the most of yourself. It didn't matter if your parents were these super wealthy people back home in England. No one cares. How do you survive here? Can you make it here? Or are you going to starve to death in America? So that's part of the reason why it wasn't based off birth. It's based on what can you accomplish. No one cares who your family line is. Alright, your book points out almost immediately you have the North and the South versions of the Carolinas. People in the North, these were more of the poor people. They were struggling a little bit. Charleston had an excellent harbor. Now, keep in mind, what is the main type of transportation system at this time period? Because cars and planes are not invented. Boats. So if you have a great harbor, you can now have great trade with other nations. So Charleston had an excellent harbor, or Charlestown as it was called. It gets condensed to Charleston later on. Because it had that great harbor, it became a thriving trade system. So the Southern California was much more wealthy than Northern California. Sorry. And that's how come they eventually split apart into two. That's what I was saying myself. I'm saying this wrong. Southern Carolina. I said California. I'm sorry. Southern Carolina split apart from Northern Carolina, so that way they would divide it into 2 different sections. Make a note, the top section was more poor section, while the South had the harbor, so they were able to have more wealth generated from it. This becomes important because that's part of the reason why Georgia is formed later on. Alright. New Netherland and New York, so really quick. Henry Hutchinson, he was hired by the Dutch East India Company to come explore the area and claim land for the Dutch, or the people of Holland, or the Netherlands today. So if you're looking at this map on my page, that the Dutch, they claimed the area of the New York area up in this section for it, while the Swedish, they claimed down here in this section. Of course, the English have this territory down here and the territory up here as well. The Dutch, they purchased Manhattan Island, so just make a note of that Peter Minuet, he acted as an agent for the company. He purchased Manhattan from the Native Americans for about $24. Now, back in the day, that was worth way more. It makes it sound like that the Indians got ripped off. Okay, no, it was worth way more back then to them. And they were trading them in other goods besides just the money idea for it. But again, today, we would say, wow, that's a steal. But yes, Manhattan or New York City is worth a lot more than that. So Peter Minuet, make a note of him fast.
How much do you think that would be in today's dollars?
I looked it up super briefly and I don't remember, and I'm sorry. A lot of the Indians as well at this time period, they didn't understand whenever an English person bought the land, they met forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. A lot of the Indians, they thought that it would eventually like change hands, or it was like renting, that it goes back whenever you die. But the English meant it as, no, this is a forever purchase. This is my piece of dirt forever and ever and ever. So there was some problems with the Native Americans and the English later on because of that. Just because English felt like, I have purchased this soil is mine. While the Native Americans thought that it was more of like a rent policy. So a little bit of problems with that. So just make a note of that. So they named their area Fort Orange, New Amsterdam, and their area, they called it New Netherland, because that's just what people did back in this area. They just called it the new whatever from whatever country they were from. your book points out that they offered religious freedom and economic opportunity. They had as many as 18 different languages in that area. Because of the ports of New York, wait, I only have like 3 minutes, I gotta keep talking. Because of the great harbor and ports with New York in this area, New Amsterdam, that's probably the reason why it's become so thriving. It's a major port. Even today, it's still a major port. So New Amsterdam, or present day New York City, that's a major, even for us today. This is a major trade center for us. That's probably the reason why the English want it later on. New Sweden, just make a note of that as well, that the Swedes, they settled in the lower portion. This was the first successful settlement in Delaware, but the Dutch take over it and make it part of their colony of New Netherlands later on for it. So originally it was New Sweden down here. It gets taken over and absorbed into the Dutch section as well. Now, they tried to establish a feudal system as well. Theirs was called more of a patroon system. It had the same idea where you would have a lord who was supposed to transport over 50 people to manage land. It didn't work. But because of that, it just didn't work out for them at all. Now, the English wanted it. They wanted it because mainly of that harbor. That harbor they realized was crucial, and they wanted it really, really badly. So England and Holland were already having skirmishes. So England had already taken over and already had possessed this land because of the skirmishes with real Holland or the Netherlands. So in order to kind of keep peace, King Charles II, he gave it to his brother, the Duke of York, as to kind of keep peace with the people of Holland. Well, whenever the people of New Netherlands found out, they were unhappy. Not only were they given away, they were given away twice. So they were unhappy. Your book points out that Peter Stuyvesant, that he wanted his people of the Dutch people to basically fight back. Your book describes him that he was a feisty, one-legged man, and he stamped his wooden foot down because he was so mad about it and he wanted his people to fight. But people said, what's the point? You might as well just be English at this point. It's okay, we'll be fine. But he wanted to fight, but his people said, no, it's not worth it. We'll just be absorbed into the English. It's okay. So just make a note though that that's where it gets renamed New York, because it was named in honor of the Duke of York. King James II, this is whenever it becomes an official royal colony, and it remains a royal colony until America's War for Independence. I almost made it, but not quite, so we gotta stop. Alright, your homework for tonight, read the pages. Let me see, read the pages. Alright, 38 through 44. 38 through 44. Answer the questions on page 40, 1 through 4. 1 through 4 on page 40, and then 1 through 7 on page 45. You'll be okay. 1 through 4 on page 40, and then 1 through 7 on page 45.